everyone, welcome to the February 2021 tutorial video for Craft Kitsune. This video will go over everything that was included in the February kit, plus a full tutorial on how to make the featured project of the month, which are miniature book boxes. This is primarily a two-part resin tutorial because that is what the book boxes are made out of. However, there are lots of different ways to decorate and fill your book boxes using a variety of mediums. I'll be including timestamps in the description of this video so that if you're a subscriber with this box or you have this mold and you're trying to follow along the steps or need help with a certain aspect of the project, you can use those to jump to where you need help with. If you're not a Craft Kitsune subscriber for the monthly boxes, I hope you still find this video interesting and leave inspired to make your own miniature dioramas. If you are interested in joining Craft Kitsune, you can view plans on the website. New signups any given month will receive the next month's box as their first kit. Lastly, you can also purchase this book box mold separately. Alright, so now let's jump into the included supplies for this month's kit. First up, we have the flyer, so it lists all the supplies, and then on the back it has directions on how to assemble your book boxes. This is the exclusive book box mold, and this is what we'll be using to make our book box dioramas using resin, and this was designed by me and is exclusive to Craft Kitsune. Then we have 200 milliliters of two-part resin, which is a 1-to-1 ratio, and this is enough to make 4 book boxes. Next we have super glue, and this super glue is great for assembling the book box parts together, and these are labeled as single use. However, you can assemble multiple book boxes using the same tube. Next we have our embellishment items, so this is a jar of rhinestones along with some other small items, and the style you'll get in your box may vary slightly. Then we have this mix with tiny butterflies, some metal pieces, and some more rhinestones. This is a set of 5 tiny jars with cork lids, and these are 0.5 milliliter jars. Next we have this design film with jellyfish and water ripples, and it also has a protective layer of plastic on it, so make sure to peel that off once you cut out the portions that you want. Alright, so before we jump into the tutorial, let me go over a few important notes regarding the mold and answer a lot of the frequently asked questions I've received. This kit comes with the exclusive book box mold, which I designed from scratch. I wanted to create a miniature diorama base that was openable like a book opens naturally. This design took a lot of prototyping and reworking, and the end result is a mold that has an all-inclusive hinge system, so you will not need any hardware to assemble your own book boxes. As far as the mold itself goes, it takes 45 milliliters of resin to complete a full book box. This mold was meant for two-part resin, however you can use UV resin, and especially on those smaller parts, so the hinges and the rods, UV resin works quite well. However, I have not attempted to make a full book box using only UV resin simply because I prefer to work with two-part resin if I am doing a larger project. Here are the dimensions of a finished book box, including how much space you'll have inside to work with. So pause the video if you want to see these dimensions. You are perfectly fine to sell the creations you make using this mold. Just please do not remold or make your own molds, and definitely don't try to sell your own molds of this. Alright, so that's it for the FAQs and a little PSA. So let's jump into the tutorial. So we're going to be making the base of the book box first, so we'll be using two-part resin. I have a silicone work mat to protect my workspace, I'm wearing nitrile gloves, and I'm also going to be wearing a respirator while working with resin. So I ended up making 4 book boxes at the same time because I have lots of this book box mold myself for testing purposes. So I ended up just dumping both of the resin bottles into my silicone mixing cup and making sure that they were still even in volume, because sometimes the bottles can be a little bit different depending on how they were filled at the manufacturer. The resin included in the kit is a 1-to-1 ratio by volume, so if you're using a different resin, just make sure to check what ratio it is, as well as if you should be measuring by volume or by weight. And then I had my timer ready to go, and I just mixed my 2 parts of my resin together for 3 minutes. I added some white opaque pigment to the resin and then mixed that in. Pigment goes a long way in resin, and you don't want to add too much pigment or it can inhibit the curing process of the resin. So I'm going to be doing this project in 2 resin layers. So the first layer is this white color, and it's going to be the pages of the book. So I'm going to pour it into each of those book cavities, so the 2 main largest cavities, but I'm not going to pour it all the way. I'm just going to pour it as well as I can just into the sides of each. It's alright if the resin goes a little bit onto the middle part of the cavities, because as it seeps down into the sides, some of that will go away, and then also you can clean it up later. And then another option is to still not pour all the way into each cavity, but still pour enough to where your white color or whatever color you want your pages to be has a thin layer on top of each of the cavities, as seen here. This way there's still room for you to add a second layer of resin so that you can make your covers a different color than the pages. Going back to that first mold that I poured, it's been 24 hours, so the first layer of resin is completely hardened. And I just used a baby wipe to get rid of the resin residue, I guess I would call it. So the resin that didn't end up seeping inside the cavities. So I'm just using a baby wipe to get rid of that. Before I pour the second and last layer of resin, I'm going to add a few of my other craft supplies. So here I'm just going in with some pink fluorescent sand. I'm pretty sure it's fake sand, although it could be real. But anyway, I'm trying to make this like fantasy underwater Atlantis-esque diorama. So I'm adding my pink sand because in my world the sand is pink. And then I'm adding some tiny shells on top of the sand. Next, I'm going in with some clear microbeads to intentionally add some bubbles, which is unusual if you're working with resin. Usually you're trying your best to get rid of the bubbles. So I mixed up a new batch of resin similar to the first layer I did. This time it is a clear green color, so I'm just going to pour it over the rest of the mold cavities. Because the hinge and rod cavities are so small, I usually use a toothpick or similar just to drip a little bit of resin into them until they're full. Alright, so now it's been 24 hours since that second layer, and it is ready to demold. So here's a quick speed up of the demolding, and then we will go ahead and assemble our book box. So we're going to be using this super glue, and it comes with the lid off because once you screw in the lid all the way, it actually punctures the opening to the glue and makes it so that the glue can come out. Alright, so here comes the most difficult part to explain, which is how the hinge system works. So you're going to want to take 2 hinges, and all the hinges are the same, so it doesn't matter which 2, but you're going to want to put them like this so that they kind of face each other like so, and then put a rod through both of them. And then the book box itself has 2 slots, so you're going to need 2 sets of this hinge system. So what I like to do, and I find is the easiest and least likely to glue things together that you don't want to be glued together, is to focus on one side of the book box first and glue one hinge from each of the sets to that one side. And so just apply a little bit of glue onto the bottom of the hinge for each one, and then put it down into the slot, and it's sized perfectly for the hinge to fit. So then you'll be left with one side of the hinges glued onto the book box, and I wait about 20 to 30 minutes for that glue to set. It doesn't take too long, but you want to make sure that it sets completely, and then after that you can do the other 2 hinges. So add just a little bit of glue and then attach it to the other side. Sorry, I'm showing a lot of different projects, a lot of different book boxes. I'm just trying to find the best footage so that I can clearly show how to assemble the book boxes, so I hope you don't mind. Alright, going back to our original project, I cut out the water ripple from the design film included in the kit, and it actually works out perfectly because if you cut this ripple film in half, it's almost the perfect size to fit inside each of the book halves with a little bit of trimming. And then I managed to lose the footage, unfortunately, but I ended up pouring UV resin inside each of the halves just to anchor and secure the design film. And if you're using UV resin on the inside or resin on the inside, you want to make sure that it does not go above where the hinges start, or else the hinges won't work properly and your book box won't close properly. So now I'm going to be adding some castles. It's kind of hard to tell, but these are castles that I actually 3D printed and then painted some gold details onto them. 3D printing these little inclusions definitely gave me another idea for a future Craft Kitsune mold and box, so look out for something you might recognize in a few months. So I just glued my castles inside the book, and I made sure that they don't overlap when you close the book, or else they wouldn't clear each other. So like if you close the book and they're right on top of each other, they would be too tall for the book to close. So I made sure to stagger them, and that was the case with a lot of different book boxes I did, like the ones with the mushrooms that you saw in the beginning of the video. I made sure that they didn't close on top of each other. And then lastly, I'm using some tacky glue and some white sand just to create a trail between the castles. So just to connect the castles like they're a little miniature underwater city. Alright, so that's it for this project. So here's the finished book box. I had so much fun making lots of different book boxes, but I want to know from you, what kind of book box would you make? Let me know in the comments. So that's kind of it for this video. Thanks for watching, and once again, if you're interested in joining Craft Kitsune, you can do so by going to the link in the description. There you can view subscription plans, and if you're brand new to resin crafting, there's also an option to add the starter kit onto your plan. So thanks again for making it to the end, and I will talk to you in the next video. Bye!